What if I told you that World War II produced aircraft engines more powerful than anything flying today? Engines that could have won the war, but didn't. 7 incredible power plants that promised to change everything, then vanished into history. Today, we're counting down the forgotten hyper-engines that were simply too good for their time. When Lycoming engineers gathered around their drawing boards in 1940, they had one obsession: raw, unbridled power. The result was the XH-2470, a liquid-cooled monster that would make even the legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin look tame by comparison. This wasn't just any engine. This was 24 cylinders of American ambition arranged in an H configuration, essentially 2 flat 12 engines married together with a common crankcase. Imagine the sound. Not the smooth purr of a typical V12, but a deep, guttural growl that announced its presence from miles away. At 2,300 horsepower, it promised to be the most powerful aircraft engine America had ever produced. The XH-2470 was destined for the Republic XP-72, a fighter that would have been the fastest piston-engine aircraft of its era. Test pilots who experienced early versions described the acceleration as violent, the kind of thrust that pressed you deep into your seat and made your vision blur at the edges. This engine didn't just promise speed, it promised to redefine what speed meant. But therein lay its curse. The XH-2470 was a mechanical nightmare. Those 24 cylinders created a symphony of vibrations that could shake an airframe apart. Cooling systems struggled to manage the immense heat, and the complexity of maintaining such a beast in wartime conditions proved overwhelming. Mechanics who worked on prototype versions needed specialized training just to understand its labyrinthine systems. By 1943, with jet engines showing promise and the war demanding reliability over raw performance, Lycoming's dream engine became a casualty of practicality. The XH-2470 represents the peak of piston engine ambition, a reminder that sometimes being first to reach for the stars means being first to fall back to earth. In the heart of Nazi Germany's war machine, Junkers engineers were crafting what they believed would be the ultimate aircraft power plant. The Jumo 222 wasn't just another engine, it was a radical reimagining of how aircraft engines could work, featuring 4 banks of 6 cylinders each in a diamond configuration that looked more like modern art than traditional engineering. Picture this mechanical marvel. 24 cylinders working in perfect harmony, producing over 2,500 horsepower while weighing no more than existing 12-cylinder designs. The secret lay in its innovative multi-bank arrangement, which allowed for exceptional power-to-weight ratios that German engineers desperately needed as Allied bombers grew larger and faster. The sound it produced during testing was unlike anything heard before. A high-pitched whine mixed with a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of those nearby. The Jumo 222 was intended to power the next generation of German aircraft, the Heinkel. Her 277 long-range bomber and the formidable Focke-Wulf Tar 152 high-altitude fighter. Pilots who experienced early test flights described the acceleration as otherworldly, with climb rates that made standard fighters seem sluggish by comparison. But the Jumo 222 was a victim of German wartime chaos. Its revolutionary design required precision manufacturing that Germany's increasingly strained industrial base couldn't provide consistently. Each engine needed specialized parts that couldn't be easily manufactured or replaced in field conditions. The complex cooling system, while innovative, proved temperamental under combat stress. As Allied bombing campaigns disrupted German supply chains, the Jumo 222 became a symbol of ambition undone by reality. By 1944, with simpler, more reliable engines desperately needed at the front lines, this revolutionary power plant faded into obscurity, a testament to engineering brilliance constrained by the harsh realities of war. The distinctive horizontal silhouette of the Napier Sabre 7 made it instantly recognizable among World War II engines, but its unique H-24 configuration was just the beginning of its remarkable story. This wasn't merely an engine. It was Britain's answer to the horsepower arms race that was defining the later years of the war. Imagine standing beside a Hawker Tempest as its Sabre 7 roared to life, 24 cylinders arranged in 4 banks of 6, creating a sound that was part mechanical symphony, part controlled explosion. At 3,500 horsepower, it produced more raw power than almost any other piston engine of its era, yet it fit within the sleek nose of a single-engine fighter with room to spare. The Sabre 7 represented British engineering at its most audacious. Unlike the famous Merlin's smooth V12 configuration, the Sabre's H layout created a power plant that was wider but shorter, allowing for different aerodynamic possibilities. Pilots who flew Sabre-powered aircraft described the acceleration as brutal, the kind of thrust that could push a fighter from takeoff to combat altitude in minutes rather than the quarter-hour climbs of earlier aircraft. But the Sabre 7's horizontal configuration was also its downfall. The complex sleeve valve system that made its power possible required manufacturing precision that British industry, stretched thin by years of war production, struggled to maintain consistently. Maintenance crews needed specialized training to service these engines, and in the chaos of forward air bases, this complexity became a liability. Perhaps most tragically, by the time the Sabre 7 was perfecting its incredible power output, the war was shifting toward jet propulsion. The Gloucester Meteor was already showing that the future belonged to turbines, not pistons. The Sabre 7's brief moment of glory was overshadowed by the dawn of a new era in aviation, leaving this horizontal hurricane as a footnote in the story of mankind's quest for speed. In the early days of American involvement in World War II, Wright Aeronautical Corporation embarked on perhaps the most ambitious radial engine project ever conceived, the R4090 Typhoon. This wasn't just another aircraft engine, it was a statement of American industrial might, featuring 42 cylinders arranged in 6 banks that created a power plant so massive it resembled a mechanical planet more than a traditional engine. The numbers alone told an incredible story. 4,090 cubic inches of displacement, over 4,000 horsepower, and a diameter so large that aircraft designers struggled to find ways to house it. When the R4090 fired up during testing, witnesses described the sound as apocalyptic, a deep, earth-shaking rumble punctuated by the staccato firing of 42 cylinders that could be heard for miles across the testing facility. This mechanical giant was intended to power the next generation of American heavy bombers, aircraft that would make the B-17 Flying Fortress look modest by comparison. The projected performance figures were staggering. Bombers capable of carrying 20,000-pound bomb loads across transoceanic distances at speeds approaching 400 miles per hour. Imagine formations of these super bombers, each powered by multiple Typhoons, creating a sound that would herald their approach long before they appeared on the horizon. But the R4090's ambition exceeded wartime reality. The sheer complexity of manufacturing and maintaining 42-cylinder engines proved overwhelming, even for American industrial capacity. Each engine required specialized parts that couldn't be produced quickly or cheaply, and the fuel consumption was so enormous that it threatened to outpace even America's vast petroleum resources. By 1943, with proven designs like the R2800 Double Wasp providing reliable power for existing aircraft, the Typhoon project was quietly shelved. The R4090 remains one of aviation's great what-ifs. A reminder that sometimes the most ambitious dreams are too big for their time, waiting for a future that may never come. In the hallowed halls of Rolls-Royce, engineers were pursuing a revolutionary concept that would challenge everything the aviation world thought it knew about aircraft engines. The Crecy wasn't just another power plant, it was a two-stroke diesel engine that promised to rewrite the rules of fuel efficiency, range, and strategic logistics in aerial warfare. Picture this mechanical marvel, a V12 configuration that sounded like no aircraft engine before it. Instead of the sharp crack of gasoline ignition, the Crecy produced a deeper, more sustained rumble, the distinctive signature of diesel combustion adapted for aviation. At 2,500 horsepower, it promised performance comparable to the best gasoline engines while consuming significantly less fuel and using cheaper, more readily available diesel instead of high-octane aviation gasoline. The strategic implications were staggering. Aircraft powered by the Crecy could fly longer missions with the same fuel load or carry heavier bomb loads over existing distances. For Britain, surrounded by U-boats and struggling with fuel shortages, the Crecy represented potential salvation. Imagine RAF bombers capable of reaching targets deep in Eastern Europe and returning home, or fighters that could escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back without refueling. Test pilots who experienced early Crecy-powered aircraft described the torque as incredible, a steady, relentless pull that felt more like being pushed by an invisible hand than the explosive bursts of power from gasoline engines. The two-stroke design created almost constant power delivery, making for smoother flight characteristics and more predictable handling. But the Crecy's diesel heart was also its weakness. The engine's weight exceeded comparable gasoline power plants by nearly 30%, and the complex fuel injection systems required for diesel operation proved problematic at high altitudes where fuel could freeze. Most critically, the specialized manufacturing techniques needed for diesel aviation engines were unfamiliar to most aircraft producers. By 1945, with the war ending and jet engines promising even greater advances, the Crecy quietly faded into history, a brilliant solution to problems that the world was solving in entirely different ways. The Chrysler XIV-2220 was America's attempt to solve the aircraft engine power problem with pure automotive muscle. In 1943, facing increasingly powerful German aircraft, the US Army Air Forces asked Chrysler to build the most powerful aircraft engine possible using car manufacturing techniques. Chrysler's answer was massive. A 2,220 cubic inch V16 engine that looked more like industrial equipment than aircraft propulsion. When first started, witnesses said it sounded like a freight train and a thunderstorm having an argument, a deep rumble that shook the entire test facility. The engineering philosophy was distinctly American. While Germans achieved power through sophistication, Chrysler went for displacement and brute force. The engine featured automotive components scaled up to aircraft specs, massive pistons, battleship-sized connecting rods, and a crankshaft so large it required specialized machinery to manufacture. The innovation wasn't just in size, it was in production philosophy. Chrysler designed it like a car engine, robust, reliable and capable of mass production in Detroit auto plants using mechanics trained on cars and trucks. The performance was staggering. The 14th 2220 produced over 3,000 horsepower, enough to turn any fighter into a speed demon. Test pilots described power delivery that felt like having a rocket motor that never ran out of fuel. But timing killed it. By the time Chrysler perfected the design, the war was ending, and military priorities had shifted to jet engines. The massive investment in tooling suddenly seemed unnecessary, and the program was quietly cancelled. At the apex of piston engine development stands the Pratt & Whitney R4360 Wasp Major, a mechanical masterpiece so advanced and powerful that it represented the absolute pinnacle of what could be achieved with reciprocating aircraft engines. This wasn't just the ultimate radial engine, it was the ultimate aircraft engine, period. 28 cylinders arranged in 4 banks of 7, creating a radial engine so complex it resembled a mechanical solar system more than a traditional power plant. When a Wasp Major roared to life, the sound was indescribable. Imagine the deep rumble of distant thunder mixed with the precise mechanical timing of a Swiss chronometer, all amplified to levels that could be felt as much as heard. At 3,500 horsepower in standard configuration and over 4,000 horsepower in advanced variants, the R4360 produced more power than entire squadrons of World War I fighters combined. This was the engine that powered the Convair B-36 Peacemaker, America's first true intercontinental bomber, and the massive Hughes H-4 Hercules Spruce Goose. Imagine standing beneath a B-36 as all 6 Wasp Majors spun up for takeoff. The ground would literally vibrate beneath your feet as 21,000 horsepower prepared to lift 185 tons of aircraft into the sky. Pilots who flew Wasp Major-powered aircraft described the experience as flying with controlled nuclear power. The acceleration was smooth but relentless, like being pushed by an invisible titan. The engine's sophisticated systems included automatic mixture control, variable speed supercharging, and cooling systems so advanced they bordered on the supernatural. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about the R4360 was its timing. This ultimate piston engine reached maturity just as the world was transitioning to jet propulsion. By the time it was perfecting its incredible performance, turbojets were already proving that the future belonged to gas turbines, not reciprocating engines. The Wasp Major was simultaneously the culmination of 40 years of piston engine development and the end of an era, a magnificent mechanical swan song for a technology that had carried humanity from Kitty Hawk to the edge of the jet age. These 7 forgotten engines represent more than just mechanical achievements. They were dreams of dominance crystallized into metal and fire. Each promised to rewrite the rules of aerial warfare, yet all were overtaken by the relentless march of technology and time. They remain stepping stones to our modern age, proving that sometimes the greatest innovations are the ones history chooses to forget. What other forgotten marvels lie waiting in dusty archives? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of aviation history.